Hola, hola, and welcome back to another episode of Cultura en Cash podcast. This is Giovanna Gonzalez, otherwise known as Gigi or the First Gen Mentor. I'm a speaker, best-selling author, financial educator, and influencer. And not me saying I'm not going to miss an episode, and then the next week I missed an episode, but I think I have a pretty good reason. I was at Latina Fest last weekend, and when I got back to the hotel, I'm like, I think I have some energy to pop in a quick episode, but I still had to pack. And I'm like, you know what? The topic I want to talk about is a juicy one. I want to wait until my energy levels are good. And I think you guys are going to see that that was a better choice once you see what this topic is today. The topic of today's podcast is going to be the real reason I started this podcast. If you have been with me for a while, meaning since like 2021 when I started TikTok, this podcast is going to feel a lot like what my TikTok lives were like. I really miss TikTok lives. They don't exist the way that they used to before. Now it's just like TikTok shop or NPCs. And I used to get on TikTok late at night and like be on live for an hour and just kind of chit chat and share stuff going on behind the scenes, share personal updates. So it's going to be one of those episodes. There is going to be a lesson at the end. So just know that. And hopefully you take away this lesson with you because it's important. Before we get into the topic, I wanted to give you an update on the Cultura and Cash Spring Book Tour. I'm about halfway through. It's been great meeting everybody in person, knowing that you love the book, that you're sharing it with your loved ones. I love hearing your feedback. Thank you for the DMs. Everything I see, I may not be able to respond right away, but just know that I see it and I'm very, very thankful for all the support. Let's see, I had two events that I wasn't able to talk about on the last podcast. Let me see, I hadn't done them yet. So, yeah, I had the Latina Sweat Project collaboration in Chicago. That was on March 20. No, I'm lying. March 21st. It was on a Thursday, I believe. And Margarita invited me and Leanne. We also had Olga and we had, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Valerie, Valerie there, who's a certified financial planner. It was a great event. Yeah, we started with yoga probably for like 30 minutes, and then we moved on to a panel discussion about the importance of wealth building and how it should be something that women shouldn't shy away from. And then they split off into individual groups to talk about money discussions. I had a booth, so I had a booth with books that I was selling. So I was there with two of the other vendors. The other vendor was De Mi Tierra, which shout out to Evelia. She's like a skincare kind of Latina owned brand. I love her products. They smell so good. And then Latina Sweat Project had their merch. So I was happy to support that as well. So thank you for everybody that came out to that event here in Chicago. It was such a good time. I said I was going to leave at 8. I didn't leave till 9:30. Everybody's like, "Didn't you say you're going to leave at 8?" I'm like, "I know, I'm just having a good time." And I stayed longer cuz I had a long day the next day, so I was supposed to leave early, but that's what happens when you're having a good time. Time just flies. Let's see. And then after that, I went to LA for Latina Fest that weekend. That was on a Sunday. It was an all day thing. It was such a good time, though. I met so many people. I did two speaking panels, one about Latinas in publishing with my friend Alejandra Campoverdi, and one on Latinas and wealth building. Both were great conversations. I had an author booth where I was doing meet and greets and selling books as well. And then it started raining, so that sucked. Yeah, it was a good time. I definitely want to go to Latina Fest, but like as an attendee next time, because it was a lot of work to be there and to be on. Yeah, I would have liked to have gone and like had a churro or walked around and had like some fruit with tajin and bought from the vendors. But I was there for business, right? So it was a different experience. But thank you to all that came out. I got a lot of comments of people saying, "Hey, I tried to go to the Postres event, but it's sold out." So that's exactly why I went to Latina Fest 2 weeks after being in LA, because I wanted to give you all in LA an opportunity to come and visit me at a big event like Latina Fest, where they had the capacity to have a ton of people. So, again, thank you all for coming out to support. This week, I will be in New York City. Oh my goodness. I remember when we booked these New York City events, it was felt so far away, and it's here. It's here. I'm leaving on Tuesday. I have two events. If you haven't seen, I have one at NYU with the Latinx Alumni Network. I believe there are still tickets. They're $15. Go to my website, Cultura and Cash. This will be happening the evening of April 3rd. And then my second event in NYC will be the next day. This one is sold out. It's with the World's Bureau Bookshop with Book Papi in Queens. He does have a wait list though, so he does always say people kind of drop off at the end because life happens. So if you are interested in getting on that wait list, please DM him because he has a link to that, and that event is in Queens on April 4th. All right, and a few more upcoming dates that I want to put on your calendar. I am going back to LA. This will be the last time for the spring. I'll probably be back in LA in the fall, but for the spring, I will be there on April 18th. I was going to do an event in Orange County. I had posted about it on stories. I think I shared about it on the podcast, but it was too hard with me not having somebody to plan the event with. The Downey City Library reached out to me. They said, we'll host you. We have capacity for 130 people. I'm like, let's do it. It's just much easier for me to show up that way. So it'll be a book chat. It'll just be me and a moderator from the Downey City Library talking about my book and the teachings. I'm not sure yet if they're going to be able to have a local bookseller there, so be prepared to bring your own book, but we'll see if they're able to support a local bookstore and have books available there to sell. But that'll be another opportunity to meet me in LA on April 15th. This one's new. I will be in Florida end of April. I'm not sure where in Florida though. I'm not sure if it's Miami or Orlando. I have no clue. I need to wait and see where I am being sent to. And I say being sent to is because I'm doing a project with Secret Deodorant. I'm still part of the No More Financial Secrets campaign. And I have an in-person event with Secret at the end of April in Florida, but we don't know where. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're in Florida. And then lastly, my last event of the spring tour should be in Chicago in Oak Park. Stay tuned for that, and that will probably be in May. Go to culturaandcash.com to learn more about these events and the dates. Sign up for my newsletter in the show notes to be the first to get access to any of these tickets, especially this Florida event that's coming up. And you can access that in my show notes. The other thing I want to give you a heads up on before I start posting about it online is that I will be giving away a few of the PR boxes that I sent to my influencer friends. They're valued at $120. They have a Bold and Glow journal. They have the No Sabo, Yo Sabo card games. They have Bonita Fierce candle. They have Mexican candy, Paleta Payaso, Carlos Quinto, and my influencer friends actually got a paperback signed copy of the book because I hadn't received the hardcover. I'm actually going to throw in hardcovers of the book in these PR boxes instead. So that'll be a fun treat. And I will only be doing this giveaway with my email list though. So if you are interested in a chance to win one of these boxes, please sign up for my email list. It's in the show notes. Before I get into the topic, the topic of today, I keep dragging you guys along. I did want to share some personal updates because I was thinking, you know what? I used to share personal updates on IG stories, but I'm just running around all the time trying to catch up with work that I don't have the time to post live updates like I used to, and I really do miss doing it. So I wanted to share on the health front. It's been a year since I had my hysterectomy. I actually wanted to put out content when it was a year, which was on March 15th. So March 15th came and went because there was just so many things going on. I think I was traveling at the time. But it's definitely been a period where I've been reflecting on how a year ago my life was very different. My health was very different. My hysterectomy was tough. It was a 2-month recovery, and it was very, very painful. The most challenging thing I've ever gone through health-wise. But I'm very, very grateful that now I'm all recovered. I still have soreness in that area, which is weird to me. I think a year later it wouldn't be sore anymore, but it's not sore to the point where it hurts, but it's definitely still sore, and I should be massaging it to help, but I don't know. I forget to. But yeah, it makes me reflect and not take my health for granted. And I am so happy that I'm not happy I had to go through that. I am happy that it kind of woke me up though about the importance of prioritizing my health. And now, a year later, I mean, back then I couldn't even get out of bed. I was in bed because I had major abdominal surgery, like Kate Middleton. I couldn't get out of bed. I wasn't doing well. And right now, I'm the strongest I've ever been. I've been lifting weights since November with my trainer. Shout out to Julio. And, little by little, we've been going up on weight, and it feels great. It feels great. I'm not doing it for weight loss, which is the first time I worked out that it hasn't been for an aesthetic or to lose weight. It's just to feel stronger, to have energy, to clear my mind, to prioritize my body, and it feels so good. And it feels so good to be strong. As a matter of fact, I'll share this fun story. When I did my first book interview, which was with CBS Chicago, we did a quick segment on a couch, not in the studio, but it was very casual. We did it on the couch. It was an IG Live, and then we had to move the couch. And there were two women struggling to move the couch, and I wasn't gonna help because I had heels on. Right, and I'm like, I'm the talent. Like, let them deal with it. And I saw they were struggling, and after a while, I said, "Oh, I can do it for you. I'll move it." I felt like it was literally like Luisa from Encanto. Like I picked up the couch like no problem and moved it, and they were both like, "Oh my god, you're really strong." And this is back in January. Yeah, so I'm even stronger than I was now. I'm even stronger now than I was then. So it's my personal goal is to be able to do a full pull up by the end of the year. I've never been able to do that even when I was like high school skinny and fit and did all the things. And my trainer said that I'm very much on track to do that. So that's exciting. That's exciting. Other thing I'm excited about is I am excited about taking the month of June off. I've mentioned I'm going to Paris with my sister. I'm so excited. She's so cute. She always sends me Instagram reels about Paris. She's very excited. I know for sure she's going to cry as soon as she sees the Eiffel Tower. I also have a Michigan trip planned with the boo. We're going to rent a camper, take the dog, and stay in a campsite. So that'll be nice when the weather's really nice in Michigan. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into the real reason I started this podcast. I don't know if some of you saw that I was launching a book and a podcast and thought, is this woman crazy? She's taking on two projects at the same time. It doesn't make sense. It actually hasn't been bad because I really enjoy doing it. And it is a way for me to share quick updates that are kind of evergreen and live forever, right? But did I envision myself launching a podcast at the same time that I was launching my book? Absolutely not. The truth is, I was cornered into having to launch this podcast to protect my brand. So, what happened is, my book, Cultura en Cash, the name of this podcast, the book that I've been working on since July of 2022. I've been talking about Cultura en Cash publicly for a while now. I've shared the book title publicly since June of 2023 when I shared that we had come up with the title, me and the publisher. My email list, actually, my email community, they had access to the name first. I believe I shared the news in March, maybe April of 2023. So it's been a while. It's been a while that the name has been out there. Of course, I secured the domains, the handles on Instagram and TikTok. Well, what happened was there was another Latina financial content creator that was planning to come out with a podcast called Cultura Cash Flow. And I don't know if it's just me, maybe I'm paranoid, but I have a feeling that Cultura en Cash and Cultura en Cash Flow sounds very similar, especially when we're both Latina digital creators slash financial educators that serve the same audience. And the reason I found out is because this person was somebody I was friendly with. I knew this person. This wasn't a stranger. So this is a person that I was on a texting basis. I've collaborated with before. And actually, first, let me just share this disclaimer. Please, I'm sharing this to show that, not everything in business is like rainbows and unicorns and cotton candy. Everybody always brags about the wins. They don't really talk about the hard things. This is a really hard thing that I had to go through. And I'm sharing it with you just to kind of show some of the behind the scenes behind business ownership, but also a lesson that you can all learn from at the end. And I'll share that at the end of the episode. What I ask is please don't try to figure out who this person is. I actually had planned on calling them out publicly because of what they did to me. And I have the receipts. If you guys don't know, I'm the receipt queen to show that she was in the wrong. But I actually got some really good advice from Tiffany Aliche, the budgetista. And she says, you know what, girl, it's not worth it. She's like, it's not worth it. And it's only going to benefit her because, she's going to get more clout. She's like, it's not worth it. She's like, you can share the story because it's still an important story, but just don't name the person. It's not worth starting drama. And yeah, it's really not. It's not where my energy should be focused on. But again, this is a good lesson that I wanted to share with everybody, which is why I'm sharing what happened, but I will not be naming who this person was. Again, please don't try to figure it out. If you DM me, Gigi, is it this person? I'm honestly not going to answer because, like I said, I don't want this to now to get into her people and for them to know. And if they know, I don't care. She knows what she did, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is to share a very hard lesson that I had to learn the hard way. So now that I've said that long disclaimer, like I said, this is a person that I was friendly with. We've had Instagram lives before. I've known her since 2021 when we both connected over, I think, Instagram. And we've had several virtual cafecitos, probably like 2 or 3. She's had me on her podcast as a podcast guest. We've collaborated on several reels for women's Latina Equal Pay Day, that sort of thing. I've passed on speaking clients to her because when I was writing my book, I had to focus on my writing deadlines and I couldn't do a lot of speaking or money coaching. And I've passed a lot of those clients to her. Again, we've been on a texting basis since 2022. She used to hit me up all the time for advice on working with brands because I have a lot of experience as an influencer working with brands. And of course, I would help her and give her insight. She would check in on me on the status of my book. How's the book coming along? We even exchanged like a couple of like happy Thanksgivings. So again, I'm sharing this to kind of show the context. So like this wasn't like a person that like I only messaged once. We had some sort of digital relationship and we would also support each other on our projects. Hey, I'm working on this. Hey, I'm working on that. Awesome. Cheering for you. And we actually met in person for coffee. So again, this is somebody that I took the time out of my day to go meet with them in person finally after having a digital relationship for 2.5 years. So the way I found out that this woman was coming up with a podcast called Cultura Cash Flow was actually during that in-person coffee. She came to Chicago and the coffee meeting, coffee chat, whatever you want to call it, was supposed to be just me and her. But last minute, she ended up bringing 2 friends, which it was weird because I was really looking forward to spending time with just her. But it actually ended up being a good time. I had a good time with her, getting to know her friends. So we're just, talking, shooting the shit, talking about everything, catching up. And one of her friends who I had just met, right? The book topic came up of my book. Oh my God, your book is coming out soon. What's it called? And I said it's called Cultura and Cash. Obviously very proud because the book was like 2 months away from being released. And I was very excited about the momentum going into it and all the hard work that I put into this book actually now coming out to the world. And this woman said, oh, how funny. Did you know that I'm rebranding my podcast to Cultura Cash Flow? And I said, no, I didn't. And I was caught off guard because, again, I'm like, Cultura Cash Flow sounds too much like Cultura and Cash. It's just adding the flow, right? Cultura and Cash, Cultura Cash Flow. There's no and then there's a flow. It's just very, very similar. So I'm like, that's not cool. And I wanted to say something in the moment, but I didn't. I didn't feel comfortable because, again, she was there with 2 friends and I felt outnumbered and I felt that it was a conversation that I should have with her on the side, not in front of her 2 friends who like aren't involved in the business of what we're doing, right? So I didn't bring it up, but I did take a mental note of like, I need to kind of flag this with her and just tell her I'm not okay with it because it is too similar to my book. So, long story short, I forgot to follow up with her because life is life and I was busy preparing for book launch mode. But what happened is she actually reached out to me. She texted me, and I will read you the text because, like I said, I have the receipts. So, this is 10 days after we met for coffee, I believe. So, like a week and a half. Oh my God, girl, I'm so excited for your book. Also, I know I mentioned when we met that I'm rebranding my podcast and changing the name to Cultura Cash Flow. And I just wanted to rerun it by you and make sure that it's cool with you. I know the names are similar, but not the same. So I wanted to double check. I messaged her back. I said, "Hey, friend," I said, "I appreciate you reaching out. It is quite similar. So I'm worried there could be some confusion and that the book and the podcast, I'm worried there could be some confusion that the book and the podcast are from the same creator. Are you still able to change it?" I actually ran into this issue when titling my book. I wanted to call it First Gen Money, but didn't because of Danielle's brand. So anybody who doesn't know Danielle has the handle at First Gen Money. And she responded, "Of course I reached out, girl. I already invested in all the branding, domains, episode creations, etc. since August, so I wouldn't want to reinvest in all of it." And then she put a sad face. And then I left it at that. I'm like, okay, this is weird that she's pushing back, especially when she reached out to me asking for my approval, wanting to make sure I was quote unquote cool with it. I'm telling her I'm not cool with it. And yes, she's saying, well, like, I don't want to rename it because I've already invested in the branding and I've been working on this since August. So I thought that was weird. I was pissed off, and I've learned not to respond to text messages when I'm emotional. So I just put it to the side and I'm like, this is weird. I need to think about this. And for anybody that still doesn't understand why this is weird, it's weird because, again, it's too close to my book name. And I have worked very hard and spent a lot of money on my book project, right? I've worked with the publicist now for 6 months to generate buzz for Cultura and Cash. That's been an investment to work with a PR professional for 6 months. I've done a lot of work behind the scenes, again, doing interviews for Cultura and Cash. The interviews are obviously unpaid work, right? But it's just to get the name out. I've done speaking events, getting the name out, podcast interviews, so many podcasts. I think I've done like, I'm not even kidding, I think I've done 30 podcast interviews. So I've put a lot of work into making Cultura and Cash relevant. Even before the book came out in January, I was teasing it, sharing updates, right? Sharing the name. So, and people have loved the name. People are like, "I love the name." And I always say, "Oh, I didn't come up with it. My publisher did," right? I paid them a titling service and they came up with a title. But I love the name too. I love the name because it immediately speaks to my reader. So, anywho, so that is why this is an issue because it is too close to home. Okay. So, like I said, I left the conversation at where it was at. And then at this point, I had a potluck with some friends that weekend. And I thought about bringing up the topic, right? It just felt right with the circle that I was with. I felt like it was a safe space. Immediately, everybody was like, "Yo, this is not cool. You need to lawyer up. Like, you can't play with this. This is your brand." And I'm like, "I don't know about lawyering up. I think I just need to have a discussion with her and just tell her that this isn't okay." They're like, "Nope. Like, this is sketch. The fact that like she texted you to check in, you told her you're uncomfortable with it, and then now she's like, well, like, too bad, I have already invested in this and spent time since August." And the whole like invested in it and since August thing is such a joke because I've been working on this book, this project, since July of 22, and she claims she couldn't change the name because she's been working on this since August of 2023. So I've been working on my project way longer and have spent way more on my project than hers. Um, but anywho, and then I checked in with my brand manager, Lisette, who handles all my brand deals. I really admire her as a businesswoman, and she gave me the same advice: lawyer up, girl. And I'm like, these people are so aggressive. What, like, lawyering up? What? This is like somebody that I consider a friend. Not, again, not a close friend, but somebody that I'm friendly with, right? So some time passed, and I did check in with my lawyer. And of course, my lawyer's like, we have to take this serious. This is your brand. This is your IP. The problem here, you might be wondering, oh, why didn't you trademark your book, right? Cultura and Cash. It's not possible to trademark a book title. So, for example, the very popular book, Eat, Pray, Love, right? It's a huge, like, New York Times bestseller, and they made it into a movie. There was a woman that came out with a book called Eat, Pray, FML, like Fuck My Life. And I remember she sold the book on TikTok, and I remember people would always ask her, "How are you able to write a book called Eat Pray FML? Like when there's a book called Eat Pray Love?" And she mentioned it's because you can't trademark a book title. So there it's you can. I mean, it's still obviously clout chasing off Eat Pray Love. And automatically you're like, oh, instead of Eat Pray Love, Eat Pray Fuck My Life, what is this book about, right? And I bought it. I bought the book. The marketing worked, right? But that's like a weird thing in intellectual property law, that you cannot protect a book's name. So that's why I had looked into it, of course, from the very beginning. Oh, should I trademark this book? And they're like, it's not possible. So, anyhow, I checked in with my attorney. She says, hey, this is an issue, and clearly we cannot trademark the title. She wants to move forward with the podcast. You're gonna have to move forward with the podcast first for you to be able to block this woman. And I thought, I don't want to do this. This sounds, I just don't want to have to. Again, why would I want to add a podcast to my plate when I already had a very, very full plate this fall preparing for my book launch? So I said, you know what? Let me talk to this woman. Let me have like because everything had been through text. I'm like, let me call her and just tell her my concerns, and she should be able to understand where I'm coming from. So I called her. We had a 20-minute call. And I said, hey, I never responded to your text. I'm calling so that there's just no misunderstandings. Are you free now? She's like, yeah, let's get into it. So we start chatting, and I tell her, hey, I know you texted me to check if I was okay with your podcast being rebranded to Cultura Cash Flow. And I said, I'm not okay with it, but you said you can't change the title because you've already been working on this since August and you've invested into the brand. I told her that I hadn't objected to this when I first learned about the podcast name when I met her for coffee, because I was outnumbered and I wanted to speak with her on the side, and I just never got around to it because of life's demands. And I said, hey, now that I'm not comfortable with this, like, what do you feel? What do you think? And she says, I understand where you're coming from, but she says, I think one thing is a book and one thing is a podcast. So even though the names are similar, they're two different mediums. So I don't think people will get them confused. And I said, I disagree. I disagree because if people look up Cultura and Cash, then Cultura Cash Flow podcast could come up, right? Like on the Google search engine. And that's not fair because, again, I've done all the work of making those keywords relevant, right? Searchable by doing all the promotion, hiring the publicist, doing all these podcast interviews, everything that I've done to get the book's name out. And I said, people are going to think that I'm the creator of this podcast, but I'm not, right? And I don't, basically, she's clout chasing off my coattails, off the buzz that I've earned and created for my book. And she's like, no, there's space for everybody. And I'm like, this isn't like a scarcity mindset thing, because that's not what this is about. This isn't about like, oh, you're going to take my clients. No, it's about confusion in the marketplace and the consumer seeing a title that's very similar, a podcast title is very similar to a book, right? And thinking that it's from the same creator when it's not. And I don't want people to get us confused, right? Because we're two different creators with two different values, two different missions. So, anywho, long story short, she says, well, I know, but I've invested a lot of resources and time into this. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. I'm like, I understand that you've been working on this since August of 2023. I've actually been working on this since July of 2022. And you know this because we've been texting about this and you've been checking in on me on how the book progress is going. And I said, I don't know how much you spent on the brand, but I said, I have spent close to six figures on this book project. $50,000 of that was paid through with a TikTok grant, but about $30,000 plus has been from my business, the First Gen Mentor. So it's it's a big investment. Publishing a book is not cheap. It can be cheap if you self-publish, but I knew the type of book that I wanted to put out there. I wanted to have a high quality book for my reader, and that costs a lot of money. Which is why a lot of people typically go the traditional publishing route because they want to get the publisher to pay for it. They want to get a book deal. So, anywho, let's see here. I'm looking at my notes. So after telling her how much time, how much work I'd put into the book, how much money I'd spent on the project, I really thought that she would understand, right? And be like, okay, you've put a lot more work into this, and this has been, and she knows that this has been in the works a long time, and she would back off. That wasn't enough. She dug her heels in, kept saying that one thing is a book and one thing is a podcast, and that they're not similar, even though the names are, and she herself admitted they were similar. And then she's like, okay, why don't you have a problem with people that like Danielle, who has the first gen money as a handle, and you're the first gen mentor? And I'm like, what's different? Like I'm like, it would be like if I have the first gen mentor, which that's my influencer name, and then somebody created an account called the first gen mentora. And somebody actually had somebody on Instagram had created an account called the first gen mentora, and she closed it, I think, after some while because she knew she was out of pocket. Um, but once I finally made that comparison of like, this feels like as if somebody would have created an account called the first gen mentora, is too close to home. That's when she's like, okay, I see your point. The decision is not just up to me. I have a production team that's behind this. Let me check in with my team, and I will get back to you next week. And I said, okay. And the call sounded promising. And I hadn't heard from her when she said she was going to check in, which wasn't a good, um, it wasn't a good sign, right? That I hadn't heard from her. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I need to be prepared for this to be her doubling down and saying no, right? And saying, no, I'm not going to change my book title, or sorry, my podcast title. And so I reached out. Again, I'll read you the text. Again, to recap, this is a woman that I've collaborated with. This is a woman that I've supported her when she's had questions about brand deals and speaking clients. I've passed on paid work to her. She's had me on her podcast. We've been in touch. We met for coffee in person. We've had a friendly relationship, and I really thought that by me taking the time to communicate to her why I had these concerns, she would back off and do the right thing and rename her podcast. And instead, this is what I got. I said, "Hi, woman. Hope you're having a nice week. Any update on your podcast name?" "Hi, Gigi. I've talked to my production team. Before I continue, we want your book to be successful. I have been supportive of your work and have only wished to continue collaborating because I am all about supporting one another as we have the same mission. That being said, removing our emotions out of this is a business. We have invested time and money into this project, and to be honest, changing the name of a podcast impacts the show more than you think, from changing our pitch decks, branding, re-recording our pilot episodes to align with the title. It's more than just a name change. Legally, there's no trademark to prevent me from using this name. Therefore, we will not change our name. If you would like to negotiate this, we will have to involve a lawyer to begin the negotiation terms of how we will proceed to compensate our time and money invested. If you'd like to proceed with negotiations, the next time you hear from me will be from a lawyer. Let me reiterate, we want you and your book to succeed, but my dollars invested matter too, and therefore we believe removing our emotions and seeing this as a business is the best way to move forward. We want the best for your book and your success. We'll be cheering you on as always. Not the good old sandwich method of like good, bad, and then good at the end, right? So this text message hit me real hard. Thank God I was with my therapist when I opened it, because I just knew that it wasn't going to be good news because I hadn't heard from her. And I had a panic attack because I felt very betrayed. Again, I felt this was a person that I was friendly with. I considered her somewhat of a friend. And for her to just say this is business and there's no trademark preventing me from doing this. And even though I know how much time and money you spent into this project, I don't care. And if you want me to change the name, we have to do it through lawyers, and you have to pay me for my time invested and um, my money invested into rebranding. Which I haven't mentioned this. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this in the podcast. Maybe you guys have been like yelling into the podcast. Didn't she already know your book title? How is it that this woman and you were connected and she didn't know your book title? That's the big question. And I did ask her that when we had a 20-minute conversation. I forgot to mention, I'm like, I don't understand why you would come out with or look to come out with a podcast called Cultura Cash Flow when you know I've had this book in the works, and it's called, and I've shared the title publicly for a while now, Cultura and Cash. And she says, to be honest, I didn't know your book title. I'm like, how is that possible? You follow me on LinkedIn, you follow me on TikTok, you follow me on Instagram. How did you not know that was my book name? And she's just like, I hadn't seen it. It doesn't make sense. The math ain't math then. A lot of people are like, she knew and she wanted to cloud chase. I don't know. I don't know what to believe, and I'll never find out. But it doesn't matter if she knew or not. The point is, I let her know that it was similar. She checked in with me to get the okay. I didn't give her the okay. And instead of settling it between us, women to women, she's like, this is business. Um, like, our relationship doesn't mean anything. And let's go through lawyers if you don't agree. So I felt very, very betrayed. And I, like I said, I had like a panic attack because my therapist helped me understand that it wasn't so much the situation that was really hurtful to me, but it was the act of betrayal. And that's a wound that I'm still recovering from. I've had family, my mom being one of them, my cousin that ruined my Paris trip being another person. I've had a lot of people in my family that have betrayed me, and those are wounds that I'm healing from in therapy. So by this woman doing this to me, it reopened that wound, right? So that's why it hit me so hard and why it was so hurtful. So thank God, like I said, I had therapy and I was able to process that. I also called my two best friends and they let me vent to them. I spoke to Violeta, my girl. She also let me vent to her, and I called my attorney that night. I said, "All right, she wants an attorney. Let's get an attorney involved." And again, I had already kind of asked my attorney, "Hey, what do we do about this?" And she had told me we're going to have to move forward with a podcast, right, for you to be able to protect it, because she only was like in the idea phase of I'm going to come out with the podcast, but she had not come out with the podcast. And the way that intellectual property works is whoever executes first is who gets the preference with the US Trademark Office. So I executed first. I wasn't just talking about I'm going to do this. I did it. I came out with a podcast called Cultura and Cash, which has had episodes now since December. We started the trademarking process and we sent a cease and desist letter to her. Uh, Sending that cease and desist letter is not something I wanted to do. I did not want to go the legal route. I did not want to incur legal fees to do this. But again, I was cornered into doing this to protect my brand. And after some back and forth, what's funny? I really thought that after her getting the cease and desist, she would back off because, hello, legally, we have everything in our corner at this point. But she had the audacity to get a Mickey Mouse lawyer. Anybody that watches Vanderpump Rules might know that reference. She got a Mickey Mouse lawyer, and the lawyer was like, "No, we don't agree, and you have to pay us." I think she said it was $6,000 or $8,000 that she had invested to the brand. Like, my client will change the podcast name if your client pays her for her resources invested into this rebranding. And my attorney's like, no, we're not going to pay you for your client infringing on our established brand. Our brand existed first. Your client didn't do the research to see that there was already another project with that similar name. So no, we're not going to be paying you for that. I can technically take her to small claims court for my legal fees, which were a little over $2,000, but it's just not something I want to deal with. I want to focus on the good things going on in my business and not give this any energy. So, so yeah, that's what happened. So I started the podcast as what am I trying to say? I started this podcast as a reaction to somebody trying to clout chase and piggyback off my hard work for Cultura and Cash. And honestly, the podcast makes sense. It really is an extension of my brand. And I love the podcast because I can talk all day. So it is an extension of my brand. It is a place where once I am done with the book tour, at least for the spring, I will be more serious and I will interview guests. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have Janice from Yo Quiero Dinero. She's going to be my first guest. I'm going to have her later in April to talk about her book, Financially Lit. Please pre-order it if you haven't already. It's a really great book. I read it and I endorsed it. And I can't wait to support her when it comes out. So I will be having like formal podcast music because, like I said, it's just kind of something I had to pull on the whim. So now hopefully that makes sense why you've been listening to this unedited podcast. It's just me in my bedroom, usually doing it late nights on Sundays with no formal editing. Is because I had to just scramble to do it to protect my brand. And to be honest, I hadn't thought about a podcast before, but when this all came up, I'm like, it actually makes sense, right? I'm a public speaker. Why wouldn't I create a place where people can hear me, listen to my thoughts, my values? And I'm a huge podcast listener myself. I really enjoy my regular podcast. So it's actually something that I think ended up being a good thing, even though it was awful and caused me a lot of anxiety and stress at a time that I was supposed to be excited about my book launch. I had this legal battle going on in the background that I couldn't talk about, right? And that was taking up a lot of mental space and emotional space. So, what's the lesson in all this? You can't trust no bitch. The lesson in this is the lesson I learned is to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. And I say this because this woman, even though we were friendly, she had already done some questionable things. And I don't want to get too much into it because then now it's going to be like petty, but honestly, she had partnered with a brand that any ethical financial content creator would never partner with. It's called BlackRock. Look them up. They're terrible for the planet, they're terrible for people. And I have been approached by BlackRock to work for them as an influencer. And I said, hell no, remove me from your list. I'm not interested. Right. So she has worked for them, taken money from them as an influencer, and also gone to an event that they had at the New York Stock Exchange, which I was also invited to and I declined. Because again, I don't want to be associated with that company because I know how harmful they are to the community, especially communities of color, and to the planet and everybody. They're just not a good company. And I'm very mindful of who I partner with. And I always make sure that they're aligned with my mission or that they're going to actually serve my audience. I've turned down a lot of brands because they don't align with the work that I do. And other people just take the check. The money is more important to them. And so, like I said, I should have known then that this woman is somebody that I didn't share the same values with. But what did I do? I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I said, oh, well, maybe she needs the money. Maybe she, her business isn't doing well. And I've learned now that when people show you who they are, believe them, right? That's a very popular quote, right? Maya Angelou. When people show you who they are, believe them. So when I saw her partnering with very sketchy, questionable brands that she knows as a financial professional how bad they are, and she still accepted the money and worked with them, I should have known then this is somebody that does not have good ethics and I should distance myself from them. So that's what I learned from this. And what I also learned from this was I have spoken to Minda Harts, author of The Memo, amazing woman. I really look up to her and respect her. And it's funny before this got legal, when it was still in the phase of like, is she going to change the podcast name or not? I said, Minda, let me tell you about the situation. Can you kind of give me any guidance? And like, what do you think about all this? And her response really tripped me out because everybody else that I had shared this story with, they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is this happening to you? This is awful. Like the names are so similar. This woman's just clout chasing. She's taking the easy route. This is not cool to do that to a friend, like to another Latina. And Minda's response, instead of showing empathy in that way, Minda's response was, get used to it. And I said, what? I was so shocked that she said, get used to it. I said, what do you mean? I was like horrified. And she says, get used to it, Giovanna. She says, when you're that girl, this is the sort of stuff that's going to happen to you. When people see that your recipe works, that you're successful in doing what you do, people are going to copy you because people are lazy and people are going to want to take the shortcut. And instead of them being creative, instead of them putting in the work, they're just going to cloud chase off your work. And she said, and sometimes you have to turn up the smoke on them. She says, and puff your chest and show them you're not messing around. So she says, always have a good lawyer on speed dial. And she told me, she's like, do you need a lawyer? I said, no, I have a great lawyer that I've been working with for 2 years for my trademark for the First Gen Mentor, my influencer brand. And she says, good. She says, let me tell you, this is not the last person that will do this to you. There will be other people, and you need to let them know that protecting your brand is something you take very seriously and you do not take it lightly, and you have to come hard on it because this is your intellectual property. And yes, I've been working on my brand, the First Gen Mentor, for 3 years, Cultura en Cash for a year and a half. It's been a long time. So for somebody to just come and cloud chase off all the work, all the foundation that I put in to make my book successful, and to come out with a very similar name podcast was just not cool. It was not cool. And you know what's funny? When she got the cease and desist, she blocked me. She blocked me on all socials as if I did something bad to her when she's the one that had mentioned attorneys first. I hadn't even mentioned attorneys. She wanted to get legal. I got legal, and she blocked me and my lawyer. So that's just hilarious. Like as if she's the victim. So yeah, that's I wanted to share this because again, everybody says, "Oh, be your own boss." You have the flexibility to create your own schedule. You don't have to deal with corporate politics. Go on vacation. You don't have to get approval for vacation, and it's true. You do get a lot of those benefits when you work for yourself, but you also have to deal with stuff like this. Like when I had my corporate jobs, I never had to deal with any intellectual property, legal battles or anything like that, right? I just did my little job, clocked in, clocked out, and I was done. And I never had to take on the stress of something like this. And yeah, like I said, as I go up, I know it's going to happen again. And I'm very glad that I'm represented by an amazing lawyer. A lot of people are probably like, who's your IP lawyer, girl? Because I want to know. Her name is Anna. Oh my God, I'm blanking on her. Her last name's hard to pronunciate. It's with a J, Junija, I think. But if you go to annalaw.com, that's her website. And she is a fantastic intellectual property lawyer. I've worked with her for, over 2 years, and she's very, very experienced. So again, I just shared this story to be real, to share something that happened to me behind the scenes, an important business lesson that I can share with other upcoming entrepreneurs, anybody who is building a brand and working really hard. Please make sure that your stuff is protected and you're going through the trademarking process. Again, I couldn't trademark my book title, so that's why as authors we're kind of screwed. But also be wary, right, of when people are moving in ways that don't align with you. And I am proud to say that ever since that incident happened, now I don't let people get away with it. I stop giving people the benefit of the doubt. And this is not to be cynical, but like I said, if people are doing things that I'm like, that doesn't align with my values, now I am ending those relationships. So I actually ended a relationship a few months ago with another fellow Latina content creator. It sucks because I really liked her. We haven't met in person yet, but we've been in contact for a while, and we've helped each other out. And she partnered with Wells Fargo, which again, a terrible brand. And you can't call yourself a financial expert and say that you know everything about money, but then you're partnering with Wells Fargo, literally the worst bank in the world. So, and for that, I did tell her, like, with my chest. I messaged her and I said, hey, I found out you're working with this partner. They actually contacted me because they wanted me. This is not to be shady, but it's the truth. These people come to me first. They came to me first because when they think of first gen and money, they come to me. So they came into my inbox in December. I turned it down. I said, I'm not interested in working with Wells Fargo. Thanks, but no thanks. And then they went to her and she accepted the money, which again, it's like taking money from the devil, honestly. And now I'm like, okay, and the old me would have given her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she needs some money. Maybe her business isn't doing well. Like maybe she needs it for a new project. And now it's like, no, there's other ways to ethically partner with companies that aren't constantly screwing communities of colors over. So I did message her and say, hey, I noticed you're partnering with this bank. I'm not, that's not cool. Just knowing how harmful they've been to the community. So our values aren't aligned. And, we actually were supposed to do, I think, a virtual coffee chat. And I said, I'll be canceling our meeting because we just aren't aligned. And yeah, so I said it to her face, well, not to her face, but I clearly communicate to her that we're just not, and I'm not no longer following her. So like I said, no more giving people benefit of the doubt. I've learned from therapy that that's actually people pleasing. When seeing red flags, and obviously that's something that I'm trying to unpack in therapy too. Of like, why am I so, I don't want to say so nice, but why do I give people so many passes, right? So it's something I'm working through, but I am proud that, like I said, as it's happened again, I'm like, okay, I want to be aligned by people who are like-minded, who have good souls, who live in a mindset of abundance and know that there's space for us all. We can support each other. We don't have to steal from each other or backstab each other. That's just not my vibe at all. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the tea on how this podcast came about. Like I said, the silver lining is that I actually really have enjoyed doing the podcast and that I will focus on it more seriously this summer once I'm done with the book tour. And I will still continue to drop episodes every Sunday. Sorry, I dropped the ball a couple weeks. The book tour has been hard to balance, but I'm almost done. Almost done. So I will catch you next Money Monday. And please rate and review this podcast. It's going to help it get discovered. If you go on Apple Podcasts and leave me a review, or even on Spotify, just like tap it. I think you can do stars. There's no way to write a written review on Spotify. And let me know what you think about this podcast episode. Feel free to DM me if you enjoyed it. Again, I will not be answering anybody's questions about who this woman is because I don't want to give her any light or any energy or any clout. It's not about that. It's about sharing an important lesson. Thanks for listening. And again, see you next Money Monday.